Time for some speed art. Alright, so this is Dan Fostel, and I'm just going to be talking to you about what I'm doing as we go through this here. So the first thing we're going to be doing is applying some frequency separation. We're going to be working on the forehead, smoothing out some of the wrinkles and such in the forehead. So I'm sampling points and then moving those textures over onto the areas that I don't like, getting rid of stray hairs, any type of little imperfections in the texture of the skin that I see. I had a crash there, so now we rebooted back into the Photoshop. So looking over the image, seeing if there's anything else I want to attack with that first layer of frequency separation. Now we're going to be moving on to the color. I'm using the mixer brush to pull the colors around the face area and try and smooth out some of the textures and move the light to where I want them. During the process of getting rid of those wrinkles on the forehead, we do end up with a lot of artifacts that we'll have to go back through and take care of later with the dodge and burn, but that was an initial trying to smooth out some of that work. Putting a little bit of a jawline in there. Just working the shadows and the high points to make a little bit more depth to the model. So I dropped the red layer down to make the imperfections show up a little bit stronger. Now I'm going back through and getting rid of some of those artifacts from the earlier process of the skin smoothing with frequency separation. So this is the dodge and burn layers. Adding a little bit of depth to the lips area with some color dodge and bring out those colors a little bit more, bring a little bit more 3D to the area. Now I'm going to start working on the eyes here. I added a little bit of color into the eyes just to make them fit the scene that I was thinking of a little bit more. Using the eye whitening area instead to work on the teeth, instead of opening a separate layer for teeth. Back that down a little bit as we usually do so it's not too obnoxious. I wanted to make sure that those catch lights in the eye were nice and bright. So now we're into masking. So masking, we're going to be using the refine edge brush to try and pull some of those hairs back in. And then the tedious process of just going along the edge with shift click and brush tool to define where the edge of our model is for a nice clean composite. I'm going to speed this section up by a lot because it is a long process. More of the refine edge brush to bring that hair back in. So once we get to the hair again, it's going to be the refine edge brush to kind of set that edge line, bring in some of the things and moving the mask to show Photoshop where I wanted the background to shine through, where I didn't. Playing with the shift edge and the feather to get the hair looking good. And now I'm going to do some test layers with different colors to see how the model looks on different color backgrounds. Now we're going to open up our workspace. So first I brought in this piece of stock image, I believe it's a church in Scotland, and we're going to reference our reference image there to see what type of colors we want to push in. I'm going to get the background ready first. Moving the colors around, moving the saturation, just getting the church to look how I envisioned the piece. So I was happy with the church. Time to bring in the model layer. I'm going to create smart objects for everything so I can resize. This is in Vado Elements. I'm able to take a 3D object, move it around, render it how I want it. So this begins the check layers, saturation, luminosity, and color. So I'll be painting those check layers in red and moving around the curves, saturation, to get everything balanced out in the image. By looking at it in black and white here, we're looking at just the luminosity values. This is now moving into the saturation with the color map. So I can see just the saturation in different parts, and I can move those saturations around and make everything balance out a little better. This is moving on to looking at the colors in the image. So I'm going to try bring the colors of the foreground elements into the background a little bit more. So bringing that cauldron and the model, the colors in it, more in line to make everything blend a little better. Playing with the shadows, playing with the highlights. Getting that cauldron to sit a little better on the image. At that point, I'm happy with the background image, so I'm going to combine that all up and start with the next part, the special effects. So we're bringing in some smoke layers, getting that cauldron effect, coloring that smoke to where I want it. I tried using Oniric on the smoke at this point, but there wasn't enough there, so I decided to duplicate those layers, make it a little bit stronger, so Oniric has something to grab onto. Just masking that out a little, blending it into the image. Brought in another piece of smoke to have this spell kind of coming up toward the hand. Again, duplicated that to make it a little bit brighter with that screen blending mode. There's a little bit of atmospheric fog, so just trying to bring the background together a little bit. We're going to put that on screen, knock it back a little bit, and then I even added some color into that smoke just to blend it into the image a little bit more. Bring another piece of smoke into the far side of the image and the background. So I wanted a little bit of smoke underneath that cauldron, but for the most part this was to put into the back of the church, get a little bit more of atmosphere behind us. So just checking what Oniric can see, I decided to grab those windows in the background, so put a little bit of glow there. Next thing, I'm targeting this amulet. Wanted there to be a glow from this amulet, so playing around with how I want that glow to look, colorizing it in Oniric. Just putting a little bit of glow on the model herself, making it pop out a little bit more. And then I'm going to do my layer compression. First we're going to add a little bit of glow from the cauldron, so I want a little bit of that purple hue from the cauldron. So I was happy with the special effects at this point. Now I build my layer compression. So this is a set of levels, top, bottom, and a radial, to push the vignette into the image and focus the attention where I want on the image. Now we're into Adobe Camera Raw to do a final color grade and polishing up of the image for us. Just playing with each piece as I go down, looking at different colors, seeing what's in there, what gets affected, where I like those levels to be set. Some of the sliders have no effect because there's no greens, there's no yellows in this picture. So I'm happy with that. Now the only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a noise layer, as we brought in some 3D elements like the cauldron. Everything has to look right in the noise. Thanks for joining me.